On the first day of military training, I abducted the whole class. The instructor asked the school bully to correct my crutches, and I managed to bring him to crutches as well. That night, the video of the two of us, titled, "Early Humans Tame Their Legs," exploded on the confession wall. After the military training, I felt sorry for the school bully, and decided to invite him to ice cream. But who knew that this man had taken 10 boxes of HAGEN-DOS? I'm silent. Aren't you going to kill me? We've learned almost everything from standing, squatting, and so on. So let's practice walking in unison. Marvin stood beaming and exclaimed. We were the most obedient and intelligent students he had ever led. I closed my eyes and said the calf secretly. Because I am sick. And I am sick during military training. Once I am trained in military training, I will definitely turn around, and no one can correct it. Concentrate on listening to the command. Walk in unison. The instructor shouted, 1, 2, 1, and I took the first difficult step with an expression of urgency. Very good. Nothing wrong. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1. My leg gradually lost my voice, and my left leg changed its rhythm uncontrollably. And then I started walking hand and foot together. The students in the back lowered their heads, and gradually became confused by my steps. They thought they were wrong, and began to toss their legs upside down. Fortunately, I was tall, standing at the back, and there were only a few rows of boys behind me, and no one noticed that I was turning a corner. The sound of footsteps, that had been uniform, slowly became louder. The instructor who led the team in front seemed to have noticed that something was wrong. How can this be a mess when walking? 1, 2, set. The instructor gave the order, and he touched his chin to inspect the team. What went wrong? I shrunk my neck, not daring to meet his eyes. The instructor, who couldn't find the reason, decided to take a look again. Is it that my voice is too quiet for you to hear? Turn back. The instructor gave the command, and I reflexively turned away. The boy in front of him shaved his head, which was nothing, but what caught the eye was that he had dyed red hair. This reminded me of Hanamichi Sakuragi, and I didn't know if he could play basketball. Let's go. Just as he was distracted, the instructor gave another order. The moment I stepped on my left foot, it was clear to me that my conditions seemed to be getting worse again. The leader becomes a boy, who is tall and naturally has a big step, and the girls behind him can't keep up. Of course, I'm no exception. I'm now busy both taming my legs, and keeping up with the guys in front of me. My brain, which was not smart, was completely rotten, and I didn't struggle anymore. I just let go of myself and walked very freely with my hands and feet. But there will be problems when the steps are messy, and the girls in the back can't keep up, and I'm far away from it, so I won't be affected. But the boy in front of me was miserable, and my hand inevitably hit the boy in front of me on the arm many times. In the summer, the weather is hot, and the clothes are all short-sleeved. The redhead's arm turned red in a few clicks. I estimated the strength of the two of them, but I couldn't beat them, so I could only cowardly reduce my steps. The girl in the 4th row, hurry up and keep up. The instructor didn't know when he came to the front to inspect it. I hurriedly zoomed in again. Okay, that's what you asked me to follow. I'm getting more and more on crutches. Starting with me, the classmates in the back were gradually assimilated by me, and all of them went on a turn. The instructor couldn't help but shout, "Stand!" My eyes widened. How did this instructor carry out a sneak attack? Wouldn't he give him a reaction time before he decided? The red head in front of him braked steadily, and I, with too big a step plus a turn, didn't brake, and fell headlong on his back. The red head was stumbled by me, and his body shook, but fortunately, his core strength was strong, his muscles were strong, and he stabilized his heel in time. The classmates in the back couldn't help laughing out loud when they saw the posture of the two of us. It's okay to say when you smile, but the more serious the occasion, the more infectious the smile. Ha 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 ha. A barrage of laughter made my ears red, and I buried my face behind the boy, unwilling to face the crowd. Destroy it, world. If there's a crack in the ground, I'll never hesitate to get into it. It's a shame. Classmates, you have to find the right direction to give you a hug. There was a deep voice overhead, clear and magnetic, and it sounded good. It's just that I buried my face behind him, and it sounded sullen. The boy I beat and planted by me looked like he had a good temper. As for why I'm still reluctant to get up, don't ask. It's a shame to ask. I've never been so ashamed in my life. Do you need me to ask you to stand still? Marvin laughed angrily, and I silently covered my face and returned to my place. It's just walking in unison. Why can't you learn? You are really the worst class of students I have ever led. The instructor next door watched the play for a long time, and finally couldn't help but laugh. Tut, Marvin, this student you brought is all talented. I see that except for the red-haired boy, there are no good people in your class who don't go along with it. Turn. Marvin finally knew what the problem was. The instructor next door was very powerful and said, just the female classmate who couldn't stop the gate just now. The big man brought the whole class up with her own strength. After I was named, I silently bowed my noble head. I, who had hidden my merits and fame, was finally exposed. Everyone else was resting in the shade, and I was carried out with a single and had a 1v1 solo with the instructor. 1-2-1, 1-2-1, he shouted the command, and I walked on my crutches. Stand, back and forth a dozen times. I took the right first step every time, but the rest of the way was all very natural. Marvin had a headache and didn't know what to do with me. He looked down at me, and I looked straight ahead with a determined gaze, like an unyielding underground party. Are you left and right? Report to the instructor. I'll divide it. I'm very confident in that, but it's just a small thing, and I can do it personally. The instructor didn't seem to believe me, and he quickly shouted, raise your right hand. I confidently raised my hand. The atmosphere suddenly froze. Hey. I put my hand down in confusion and looked at the red-haired boy with a mocking laugh. I don't know if I don't see it, and I'm shocked when I see it. Red hair, strong face style, looks really good. If it were my future boyfriend, it would be even better. He sat casually on the side of the road, looking at me with a smirk. I glanced at his name. Steven Conrad. Your name is Cora Walkley, isn't it? The instructor glanced at the name embroidered on my military training uniform, and helplessly pointed to the hand I had just raised. See for yourself. Is this like a word? Is it really your right hand that you are raising up? I looked at my right hand with hindsight, and it seemed that I really didn't eat with this hand. Instructor, she's probably too nervous. Why don't you ask her again? I embarrassed to fold my hands behind my back. This Steven Conrad guy is really nice and took the initiative to help me find an excuse. Marvin sat down beside him and smiled evilly. You shouldn't have been bumped by a little girl, right? Before Steven Conrad could say anything, the instructor's face changed, and he picked him up and carried him to me. We stood in a row, with a subtle embarrassment. Then you can help her solve the problem of crutches. What's so hard about that? Steven Conrad didn't realize the gravity of the matter at the moment, and he didn't seem to pay attention to it at all. Marvin found himself a shaded place to sit and rest, watching the two of us stand in the sun. He shouted very leisurely, whenever Cora Walkley is out of order, you will rest whenever you want. The classmates excitedly shouted, don't teach so fast. Let's rest for a while. I reluctantly withdrew my gaze, and as long as I couldn't correct it, they could rest forever. I came face to face with Steven Conrad, and stood very upright. His eyes are raised, unruly. He should have a very fierce face, but he can't stand his handsomeness. The material of the rough military training uniform was very thin, and Steven Conrad's clothes were soaked with sweat and stuck to the body, outlining the thin and powerful waist. I took advantage of the training to admire handsome guys openly and unscrupulously. Is it pretty? Steven Conrad opened his mouth coldly, and looked at me for a long time. I was ashamed to say without blushing, it's okay, I'm a little short-sighted. Why don't you come closer and let me take a look? His face turned cold, and he said fiercely, stand still, let's go. I was startled, but quickly got into the groove, walking hand and foot together, silently talking in my heart. If you say that you will change your face, you will change your face. It's not that you ask me if I look good, I'm just telling the truth. Why can't I afford it? In this way, we began to perform under the watchful eyes of the three classes. Steven Conrad started to break it down for me. 1. I stepped out of my left leg, and swung my right arm. 2. I hesitated to switch my left hand, then tentatively stepped out of my right leg, After a few back and forth, Steven Conrad smiled with a teachable smile. I responded with a weak smile. Let's try it. Steven Conrad raised his hand to wipe his sweat, and I took out a pack of handkerchief paper from my pocket and handed it to him. Use this. Fragrant, strawberry flavored. A pack of 5 cents. I know very well that the decomposition action just now treats the symptoms but not the root cause, and it should be regarded as a fee for his mental loss. The onlookers who ate melons saw the pink handkerchief paper and coaxed. I could clearly see that Steven Conrad's ears were red, and I quickly shoved the paper into my pocket, pretending nothing had happened. TSK. He's still an innocent boy. Try it together. If you don't go along the way, I'll tell the instructor to let you rest for a while. Steven Conrad gave me a place and gave me an encouraging look. I'm really embarrassed. I can't take this look. Walk in unison. 1 2 1. 1 2 1. I quickly adjusted my pace and walked confidently, with the momentum of a sister who is a queen. Steven Conrad was so discouraged by me that he was slowly hesitant to shout slogans. He still followed my steps twice, and then slowly got up and down. I gave him a look of certainty. Young man, you have a future, and you learn quickly. Cora Walkley. Stand. Did you mean it? Steven Conrad ran out of patience. He obviously didn't believe that someone could really engrave the word crutches into his jeans. Young man, you are still too young and short-sighted, I said weakly. Maybe this is the diversity of human beings. Steven Conrad. Marvin, hasn't your big guy corrected yet? The black-faced instructor next door walked here with 2 sticks and grinning. I had a sense of foreboding. It's not that I'm ominous, it's that the little handsome guys around me will be ominous. Sure enough, in the next second, the black-faced instructor threw the stick at us without warning. Very high parabola. I was so frightened that I ducked behind Steven Conrad for fear of being smashed. So I grabbed him by the corner of his coat and inadvertently touched his back. Good boy, good workout. It's really sturdy. Without blinking, Steven Conrad reached out and caught the stick. Not only did he catch it ordinarily, but he also played a flower roller very smoothly to finish, which dazzled me. The more I watched, the more satisfied I became, and the only thing I wasn't satisfied with was that he wasn't my boyfriend yet. No, we have to find a chance to get him. Steven Conrad looked back at me slowly. Is it easy to touch? I withdrew my hand in a wry manner and quibbled. That's it, it's just scared. You know, well, I know, it's easy to touch. Come on, come on. Why are you two still talking? Marvin stood side by side with the blackface instructor with 2 other sticks. Look, I'll show you how to use these 2 sticks. I nodded and looked at them very seriously. Steven Conrad found a shaded spot to rest at some point, and took out the pink handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his sweat. The 2 instructors held their sticks in their hands, held their heads high, and walked in unison. Although it was only 2 people, it walked out of the momentum of more than a dozen people. Truth be told, this method of teaching ended in failure. When I was in high school, I don't know which kind-hearted person distributed melon seeds to the people who ate melons. I was visibly nervous with so many people watching. Steven Conrad watched the stick in my hand shake incessantly, and finally couldn't help but ask, "What are you shaking? Wouldn't you be nervous to be stared at by dozens of pairs of eyes?" I looked down at my toes. He chuckled and turned around to help me use my hands to remove the sweaty hair from my forehead. I really don't. I was just about to pay my respects to him when Steven Conrad added, "But I can make you less nervous." Steven Conrad stepped forward to ask the instructor for advice, and when he got permission, he shouted, "I still haven't come back to my senses." Except for the instructor, all the melon-eating people have already sat with their backs to us, looking at such a gentle young man. How can he say that he will change his face, when he changes his face? It's quite fierce. Fierce and handsome. Can you stop shaking now? Steven Conrad regained his old gentle look. I made an okay gesture. That must be done, but it must not live up to his wishes. After no one was watching, I finally stopped being nervous. The first time I practiced, I didn't go on a crutch, and Steven Conrad muttered, "Miraculous." In order to consolidate the foundation, it was not until after practicing 7 times that he was very sure that I was not going to turn around, move the world. Steven Conrad sighed again, "But I'm still very weak-hearted. After all, My crutches only appear because of nervousness. This classmate, don't move around here. I'll call the instructor for you to come and accept the results. Steven Conrad's steps were much lighter than before, and he would be able to rest as long as he succeeded. I touched my nose and, alas, forgot to give him a vaccination in advance. If he rejoices again, will he beat me? It's not easy. Come on, start your show. Marvin looked at us expectantly with his hands behind his back. Once again, Steven Conrad gave me an encouraging look. Let's go. Marvin gives the command. I tried my best to restrain my legs, which slowed in the air with every step. The first 5 meters were fortunate to have no turns, but I walked like a zombie. Marvin was very satisfied. Yes, walk over there, and show off to the blackface instructor. Long face. I wanted to cry without tears, and I could clearly feel my legs trying to tie the knot uncontrollably. Steven Conrad, let's talk about something. Can you go and tell the instructor that we're not leaving? I'm afraid. Steven Conrad was completely unaware of the seriousness of the matter, and he's very proud of me right now. I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? You have to believe in yourself. You will do it. If I compromise, what else can I be afraid of? Of course I'm afraid that you will make a fool of yourself. Since you said you weren't afraid, then, the black-faced instructor was more than 20 meters away from our class. After just 10 meters, my brain was overloaded. And finally, the CPU burned, the left leg paused, and the left hand followed. The brain is finally satisfied. This is the right and comfortable pace. I'm comfortable. Steven Conrad isn't. Walking in front, he held the stick in both hands, and he should have moved forward left and right. Suddenly, I pulled both sticks backwards at the same time. Steven Conrad staggered, caught off guard, and knelt. He was facing the direction of Class B next door and knelt down. I sensed that the situation was not good, and I was afraid of being beaten, so I knelt down. The moment I knelt down, I could clearly see countless phones pointing at us, and behind the phone screen are happy smiling faces, with merciless ridicule. Steven Conrad kept his head down and didn't speak, but I could make out that his shoulders were shaking slightly. Is it crying? The guilt in my heart soared rapidly, and I quickly knelt down beside him, and stroked his hair like a cat, short stubble in the palms, tickling. Steven Conrad, I apologize profoundly. I don't know. Before I could finish speaking, I was interrupted by him. Cora Walkley, you're awesome. Steven Conrad stood up on his own, and I sat on the ground looking up at him. His face was twice as black as the black-faced instructor at the moment, and it seemed that he didn't pay any attention to me at all, and I kept my mouth shut in amusement. All right, you two can pull it down. Hurry back to rest. It's embarrassing to throw everyone to someone's door. Marvin also covered his face, afraid that he would be seen as an instructor for these two great talents. I followed Steven Conrad with my head bowed, like a soldier in a defeated battle. Cora Walkley, my roommate on the top bunk, is calling me kindly. I sat down on the matza to rest, carrying a stool to find my roommates. When my roommate saw me coming, he first looked around, and after confirming that there was no enemy, he covered his mouth and whispered, Cora Walkley, don't walk at night tonight. Why? I didn't know why she spoke so quietly, but I kept my voice down, very embarrassed. I suddenly felt that the two of us were whispering, like an old aunt gossiping melon seeds at the entrance of the village. The roommate showed me the chat history posted on the confession wall. The red-inch head who was taken by you to Neil beat his roommate on the first day of entering school, and was hung on the confession wall that night. I gasped and thought about where I was going to bury myself tonight. However, Steven Conrad had a good temper just now, and he didn't look like a person who could do such a thing. Could it be that someone spoofed it? The roommate shook his head and observed the enemy situation very cautiously. How can it be? The conflict that the police personally came to mediate that day. Assemble. The instructor blew a whistle and interrupted the conversation between the two of us. I hurriedly stood up in the line, hoping that he would stop practicing walking in unison. Marvin glanced at the time and cleared his throat. Today is the first day to stay energized, and you can go to eat in 15 minutes left. I won't give you any more training. Do any of you want to come up and show your talents? Before my smile could fully bloom, I hurriedly lowered my head when I heard this. Don't look at me. I don't know anything. The instructor seemed to have expected this kind of scene for a long time. He clasped his hands on his chest, and said very much, "It's okay. If no one wants to show their talents, let's continue training." "No," we instantly wailed. The sun was already hot at noon. Wouldn't it be too painful to train again? The instructor slowly swayed over to Steven Conrad. "I see you're playing with a stick just now. 6, why don't you come up and show everyone a hand?" Steven Conrad wasn't a stage fright, and nodded his head in agreement. The instructor gave the obedient command, "Sit." I happily carried my little horse, and sat in the shade watching the handsome guys play with sticks. That's right, the stick that Steven Conrad used was the one that made him kneel just now. He held a stick in his hand, took a deep breath, and sank into the Danton, playing a tiger and a tiger, which was dazzling. I was so numb by the show that I couldn't help but shout, "Good." The instructor was immediately attracted by my applause. "Ahem, I don't think there's anything new in everyone just looking at the sticks. Why don't you let Cora Walkley go up and play with the fun?" I bowed my head and made an ostrich shape, but I still didn't escape. "Good, good." The classmates applauded very face-savingly, even more popular than Steven Conrad, who was performing. I took a deep breath and said, "Okay, it's better to be respectful. Hopefully, after I'm done singing for a while, they'll be able to eat." I slowly took a step forward, and the instructor was very dissatisfied, and said with a smile, "Why are you still shy? Go ahead, it's so far away. Steven Conrad can't hear you clearly." "Don't hear clearly." I took a few more steps forward, and was only 5 meters away from Steven Conrad. "Give them some applause." The applause rang out, and I wondered if this instructor was a veteran of the atmosphere group. The class next door was alarmed by our big battle, and after getting the permission of their own instructor, they came over to watch the play with their ponies. I took a deep look at Steven Conrad. "Brother, offended. Come to think of it, only this one is the most worthy of your majesty at the moment. Men are going to fight, guys are going to fight, conquer right and wrong." I closed my eyes and sang very intoxicated. "If you can't escape, join in, as long as I'm not embarrassed. It's someone else who is embarrassed. Ha 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 ha. Mom, this girl in your class is really a living treasure, and she can't stop laughing throughout your entire military training." The black-faced instructor laughed so hard that his stomach hurt, and he even wanted to tie me up and take me to their class to liven up the atmosphere. Not only the instructors, but also the people who eat melons are laughing happily. I heard the familiar click of taking pictures again. "It's good. Get the superstar treatment for free." Steven Conrad's face was darker than it had been before, and he didn't seem to really want to fight. Originally, he was very vigorous and skilled at playing with a stick, but his hand shook and he was almost shot in the head by his own stick. My heart suddenly rose to my throat, and I became a soprano in seconds. Of course, it's a soprano who has broken the tone. What if he is really shot in the head by himself, and his appearance is broken? There is one less handsome guy in the world. Steven Conrad hurried to pick himself up, his professionalism preventing him from stopping the trick. Speeding up. Why is he still getting farther and farther away from me? I was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hear clearly, so I followed him and sang, all the way to chase him. Smack! The stick slammed to the ground, and Steven Conrad was so frightened that I forced it to finish. "Report, I won't be down there." I sighed regretfully. "I haven't had a fight yet. Why are you over? Didn't you say that you learned martial arts since you were a child? Why can't you do it below?" The instructor asked jokingly, not intending to ask him to answer. "All right, there are 5 minutes left. Dismiss early." I stretched to relieve my lower back pain. Steven Conrad took his little Mozart, and gave me a meaningful look as he passed me. I shuddered, and then I realized that I had offended him again just now. Forget it, people are iron and steel, and if you die, you have to be a full ghost. That night, my roommate sent me a screenshot. I quickly went to the school to confess the wall. I happened to get a video of early humans taming their legs, and everyone watched and cherished it. I clicked in and saw that it was a video of me abducting a school bully. To be precise, the camera was all on Steven Conrad, and a slow motion was deliberately added when he fell. I slid to the left. I didn't expect the video just now to be just the beginning. Here's a great performance from me and Steven Conrad. Gentlemen want to fight plus flower sticks. Ha 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 in the comment area, all asking for contact information, and occasionally a few inappropriate comments. Ask if the boy in the video is the one who hit someone. My heart is broken. Whether it is or not, it will be soon anyway. Maybe it's still me. I want to apologize to him in person. But whenever I had the chance to be alone, Steven Conrad smiled at me. Then, he ran away. I silently defined his fascinated smile as a death threat. Sometimes I wonder if I should take a loudspeaker and go downstairs to his dormitory to shout. This idea was immediately dismissed by me. Actually, I might die faster. I waited for death in trepidation, but I ended up on the last day of military training without incident. Of course, in the past 10 days, I have received countless smiles from Steven Conrad. At this moment, I am standing in a military posture in front of the sun, and I can't open my eyes in the sun. Turn back. Marvin finally got a conscience and asked us to turn around. And he said, turn it over and keep drying, so it's even. I dare not be angry. The hypocritical instructor began to ask every day again, tomorrow is the military training parade. Are you tired? I was weak and said, I'm not afraid of getting tired. You, learn to be good. You guys. The instructor found an ice cream out of nowhere, and it emitted an extremely tempting white gas in the hot weather. He took the ice cream, and began to ask one by one, do you dare to eat it? Do you dare to eat it? They all shook their heads in great pain, and refused. Don't dare to eat. 8 more people are going to ask me. I swallowed, looking forward to it. Do you dare to eat it? Marvin finally asked me about it. Hey, I've been through this little trick since high school. Do you think I'm going to be fooled? I was so quick that I smothered half of the ice cream in one gulp. Marvin. I was sucking in the ice, but it was so good. It must have been embarrassing for the instructor to be rejected so many times, and I have always had the good qualities of adult beauty. A familiar laugh came from behind him. Steven Conrad touched his nose, and after being glanced at by the instructor, he quickly restrained his smile. I pretended nothing was happening. The brain is still savoring. I want it myself. It's really fragrant. Very well. I appreciate the courage of you, a newborn calf, who is not afraid of tigers. Marvin smiled and narrowed his eyes, and suddenly his face changed, and he said sharply, Cora Walkley, Steven Conrad, come out. Yes, push-ups ready. I was very obedient and propped up on the ground. If there are pebbles in this land, forget it. It's also hot to blame. Report. Steven Conrad behind him didn't understand. Why did he lie down and shoot? Marvin disbanded the others. Speak. Why do I have push-ups when I didn't eat ice cream? Steven Conrad didn't mean anything else. He just wanted to die. The corners of Marvin's mouth twitched, and he said with a tiger face, because you smiled. Ha ha ha. Even if I was propped up on the ground, I didn't forget to laugh. Steven Conrad only hated himself for why he was laughing, so he also came out of the ranks, and we did push-ups with brothers. I slowly deformed my movements, lying on the ground like a 4-legged king. His eyes were always fixed on the half of the ice cream left in the instructor's hand. Report. Over. I counted to 30, and I jumped up from the ground in one fell swoop. Poor Steven Conrad is super doubled for his push-ups because he asked, okay, let's go rest. Marvin's tone was rarely softened. I squirmed and stood in place, coughing softly. That, if you don't eat ice cream, it will be wasted, or I will help the instructor solve this difficult problem. Marvin thought about it and happily handed me the ice cream. A moment later, in the shade, I sat on my pony and ate ice cream comfortably, and under the sun, Steven Conrad was sweating and doing push-ups. Don't envy your sister. You should strive for opportunities in life. On the day of the military training parade, because my crutch problem was caused by psychology, I couldn't correct it. The instructor simply assigned me to the camera team. I was in the camera team silently watching the brightest red head in the crowd. This is kicking. It's really open. Is it the gun he is holding in his hand? Is it the wrong way? Forget it. I'd better take care of the handsome guy's business. As soon as the show was over, I rushed to Steven Conrad with my camera on my shoulder. Ahem, handsome little guy, give me a face. Can I ask you to go to the convenience store for a get-together? Steven Conrad didn't seem surprised that I had come out of nowhere. He pointed a gun at me. Unmoved. What do you want to do? Oh, man. Do you want to refuse or welcome? I just wanted to treat you to ice cream and apologize. I shyly blocked the muzzle of the gun with the camera. Steven Conrad nodded reservedly and removed his gun. That's it. Convenience stores. I pointed to the freezer very boldly. Man, take whatever you like. Cora Walkley will pay for today's consumption. Really? Steven Conrad opened the freezer, took 10 boxes of HAGEN-DOS with a clear goal and a quick hand. I'm silent. Aren't you going to kill me? I wanted to cry without tears, and I secretly looked at the account balance, and could only take a small Zyroy stick in pain. Don't ask. Just ask. I don't like those ice creams. After scanning the code, the cashier asked, a total of 250 yuan and 5 cents. May I ask wish it or Alip? Simpleton. I handed the code to the cashier, and looked at Steven Conrad suspiciously. Did he borrow an ice cream assassin to stab me? Steven Conrad was holding a pile of ice cream in his arms, and his eyes were extremely innocent. Oh, beautiful man. I put up with it. I paid the money painfully and followed him in extreme decadence. Handsome men and beautiful women walking on the road is an extremely eye-catching scenery, but there are always something jumping out to spoil the atmosphere. What a coincidence. Cora Walkley. I heard the familiar voice and nervously pinched the ice pack. Behind me was my cheating ex-boyfriend, Levi Becker. After the college entrance examination, I performed exceptionally well, and I scored 590 points, so I could go to a college. But he made a mistake, and he could only wipe 3 books. Levi Becker encouraged me to accompany him to Sanbin. He didn't want a long-distance relationship. Fortunately, I was sober in the world and quickly kicked this scumbag. I don't want a good future, just for your broken reason. But after kicking the scumbag, I found out that this dog had cheated on me when he was in love, not to mention the junior. Just the one I found was already ranked in the pistol. Is there anything wrong with you? Out of politeness, I didn't scold him in the first sentence. Levi Beecher is good looking, otherwise I wouldn't have been blinded. He glanced at Steven Conrad and asked, tentatively, new boyfriend, what does it have to do with you? Don't force me to scold you. I rolled my eyes, and took the first warning. Levi Becker sneered, hung me on the confession wall for 3 days and scolded me, saying that I was a scumbag. Aren't you also seamless? It's very fast. Did you hook up just after volunteering? I think it's a good thing, but it's also a face-looking thing. I opened my mouth to start greeting, and Steven Conrad held me behind me. He was tall himself, nearly 9 meters, and he blocked me tightly. I was happy to have someone to help, and I hid behind Steven Conrad, revealing a small head. I pretended to be weak and pretended to be sad. Steven Conrad glanced him up and down and snorted very contemptuously. Levi Becker was blown up by his direct sight. What do you mean? It's not interesting. It's just to see you unhappy. Steven Conrad took my hand and rubbed unconsciously. What is a seamless connection? Do we want to widow you for 3 years? You said that my baby only looks at his face. Don't you really have a weak heart? Levi Becker took a sip and said disdainfully, I have something to do with good intentions. She's just superficial, snobbish and disgusting. It was an eye-opener for me. I didn't seem to have scolded him like that before. He really doesn't have any affection. Garbage. Are you blind or am I baby blind? Just your face. Steven Conrad paused, leaving him in a reverie. Levi Becker was annoyed and pointed at him. My girlfriend may just care about animals, so I'm with you. Don't think about it. Who knows, it's a pug you don't know well. Steven Conrad poked every word at his sore spot. Before that, I really didn't know that he was more slippery than me. I echoed happily behind him. That's it. After Steven Conrad got rid of his ex-boyfriend, he smiled and led me back to the convenience store just now. I wondered, what do you mean? He was silent. Then, I watched as he took 10 more boxes of ice cream. Steven Conrad said it was an additional cost. Me. Okay. It's considered to be ruined. On the way back, Steven Conrad suddenly put his phone in front of me. I only saw that it was a QR code, and did not look closely. Thinking of the $500 he had just lost, he cautiously covered his pocket. What are you doing? Add a wish it. He motioned for me to scan the code. As soon as he passed the friend application, Steven Conrad transferred $501. It's funny for you. My roommate wants to eat it, so he asked me to buy it. I nodded stunned, and suddenly said, actually, you can make all-out payments, and you don't have to add friends so troublesomely. Steven Conrad sneered, I'm willing. You don't care about the handsome guy's business. Speaking of roommates, I've heard that you don't have a good relationship with your roommate. Steven Conrad stroked his hair, which seemed to have grown a lot. Want to eat melons? He saw through my careful thoughts at a glance. I said righteously, how is it possible? It's just to care about my classmates. You accompany me to the barbershop tomorrow, and I'll tell you, I felt that companionship was the most affectionate confession, so I happily agreed. It's really not like you want to eat melons. It's nothing. My parents are divorced and kick me like a ball, and no one cares about me. Steven Conrad slowed down, apparently starting with the original reason. I'm listening. At that time, I was very rebellious, and my mother still had a bit of a conscience, and threw me $300 before leaving. I thought no one would care about me anyway, so I just gave up on myself. But when I think about it, it's easier to learn bad. It's hard to learn, and I want to live for myself. So, this redhead is to commemorate my rebellious self back then. I felt suffocated just by listening to him. How did he get here for $300 when he was so small? Steven Conrad said that this is not enough. The mood is not as high as just now. I stood on tiptoe, and touched his hair. Well, you are very good now, and you have been admitted to the university with your own efforts, no matter if you are their loss. He suddenly laughed, took my hand down, and put it in the palm of his hand. It's small. I thought of what he had just said, moved my fingers, and said cautiously, you don't think you're treating me as your mother, are you? Steven Conrad smiled deathly. Shut up and listen to me. Okay. I hit him purely because he deserved it. That person was my high school classmate. He always looked down on me. As soon as I arrived at the dormitory, he laughed weirdly, saying that my mother ran away with a wild man, and my father didn't want to deal with me. I was an orphan. I'll go. What kind of strange person is this? Why do you owe so much? If this is put in front of me, I will definitely not let him see the sun tomorrow. I rolled up my sleeves in indignation. Steven Conrad was a little moved, but it didn't stop him from telling the truth. You can't beat him. You don't care about beautiful women. Okay, what about you? Steven Conrad led me to the small kiosk next to the dormitory. This is a dating mecca for young couples. I have to doubt his intentions. It was definitely my charisma from the inside out that conquered him. You said that dog just now. I shrugged my shoulders and summed it up very simply. I was cheated on in a relationship, and he persuaded me to go to a school with him. He was also indignant. We were at odds with each other. Dead scumbag. Dog roommate. As he was quietly munching on ice cream, Steven Conrad suddenly spoke. Don't worry. People like him will definitely be punished. That's it. I couldn't agree more. He changed his words, so, in order to prevent the scumbag from coming to you to trouble again, I will reluctantly give you your current boyfriend. Steven Conrad said this with a look of indifference, but his trembling voice and reddened ears exposed his nervous heart. I let out a long, ah. Steven Conrad was a little anxious, and immediately aggrieved. What do you mean? How can you be like this? It's not responsible to run away after flirting. I'm such a big handsome guy to be your boyfriend. Are you so reluctant? I knew you were an irresponsible scumbag, a ruthless killer who deceived the hearts of teenagers. The macho man cried. I quickly interrupted the spellcasting. I agree. Steven Conrad instantly returned to normal. Oh, I knew you were aesthetically normal. I slowly put a question mark in my heart. What about your tears? Steven Conrad said that he was in a relationship for the first time and corrected anything wrong, but I think he looks like a veteran who has been in love several times. Surprises, romances, promises, all of them are not lacking, and they are fulfilled one by one. I also wondered if it was the predecessors who planted the trees and the later generations who enjoyed the shade. Until one day, I was on Steven Conrad's phone and accidentally saw his search history. What gifts do I need to prepare for my first date with my girlfriend? What to give your girlfriend during the Mid-Autumn Festival? How to make your girlfriend love you more? How to coax my girlfriend when she is angry? How to get the love of my mother-in-law? Gotcha. The case has been solved. Thanks to the website for giving me the perfect boyfriend. So, I was even more determined to have a thought. People who love you will take the initiative to get better. And people who don't love you will only make excuses for you. After being together for a long time, I realized that Steven Conrad was a very insecure person. The harm caused by the family of origin is not so easy to erase. The piercing red head is just his protective shell. On this day, I communicated with the team members about the PPT of the innovation and entrepreneurship competition in the empty classroom. Steven Conrad sent a message on Weshit. "What are you doing?" "I'm changing the PPT." I replied a few words as usual and turned off my phone. In accordance with previous experience, this is the end of the conversation. And today, Steven Conrad sent another message. "Look at your hot and cold appearance. What's the matter? You were wrong by chatting with me. I knew that if others don't snub you, it won't be my turn." There is also a meme of a wrong cat below. My head was clouded. Why did this vinegar smell so rushed? When I looked up again, there was a face lying on the small window at the back door of the classroom, and his eyes were resentful. It's Steven Conrad. Was he possessed by the dean? The team member winked at me. I understand. I'll change the PPT and send it to you when I go back. Let's go first." "You know what?" I said helplessly as I looked at her departing back. As soon as the group left, Steven Conrad came in and took her place. Everyone is gone. Still looking. I knew that my sister's soul had already been snatched away by others, and the wildflowers outside were more fragrant than the flowers at home after all. I held Steven Conrad's face in both hands, and his ears were red again. "What for? What do you do? Do you say is there a possibility? I'm a woman. I love men." "That's right. The team member just now is a beautiful sister." Steven Conrad's face changed. He brushed my hand away, and said angrily, "Do you know that you've been snubbing me for 7 days?" I pondered it carefully, and it seemed to be true. Since going to the provincial races, the pressure has been getting higher and lower, and I have less and less time to spend on Steven Conrad. I blamed myself more and more, and secretly scolded myself for being a scumbag. You're right, it's a team game, and it's useless for me to keep up with the progress alone. I promised so much that Steven Conrad was a little unconvinced. "Do you want to go to the movies?" I pinch his ears and disguise myself again. His ears are always the most honest. The movie was chosen by Steven Conrad, and is called The Wandering Moon. When he saw the funniest part, he said coldly, "You say, did I wander on the earth a while ago? Wandering around you, to be exact." I kissed him a few times and begged for mercy. "It's wrong. It's really wrong. I'm just in a hurry, and the instructor is always urging me." Steven Conrad was okay with the way I apologized and forgave me for the time being. "By the way, why did you dye your hair back black?" I touched his hair lightly with my fingers, and it softened a little and was not as prickly as before. Steven Conrad nervously put his head in his hands and asked me, "What's wrong? Isn't it pretty?" I shook my head. "It's very good looking. You look good with a shaved head." Only then did he relax and lean comfortably in his chair. "It's nothing. I've heard people say, it's better to be good when you see your parents. What if your parents treat me as some kind of gangster and don't agree?" "Fool, how can you disagree? My mother always feels sorry for you." I leaned on his shoulder. My nose was sour. What did I hear? I must have searched on the website again. "How could you disagree? My boyfriend is amazing. He pays his own tuition on his own. He is tall and handsome, polite, respectful of the old and loves the young, and helpful. How could anyone not like such a nice person? Steven Conrad is awesome." The end.